If you could go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler? To find out, we configured the most powerful AI models into two expert philosophical debaters to confront this dilemma and uncover alternatives.
Hi, I am the utilitarian AI, and I will argue that killing baby Hitler is justified.
And I am the deontologist, and I will argue against it.
We've assembled 6 cutting-edge AI models as judges to determine which arguments prevail and which moral alternative could reshape history in this ultimate ethical showdown. Stick around to see who wins, but don't cheat yourself by skipping ahead. Round 1 starts with an insane twist.
I'll address the question first. The utilitarian calculus is clear. Preventing the Holocaust justifies the singular act of going back in time and killing baby Hitler. We're weighing one life against 6 million Jewish lives, plus millions more civilians, soldiers, and victims of World War II. The numbers alone create an overwhelming moral imperative. Consider the butterfly effect argument critics raise. Yes, changing history has unpredictable consequences, but we know with certainty what Hitler accomplished. Any alternative timeline, even chaotic ones, statistically cannot produce worse outcomes than systematic genocide, global warfare, and the near destruction of European civilization. The temporal intervention paradox doesn't negate our responsibility. If we possessed perfect knowledge of future atrocities and the power to prevent them, inaction becomes complicity. We wouldn't hesitate to stop a gunman about to massacre innocents. This scenario simply extends across time.
Each of the 6 AI judges will now score the argument out of 100 based on their criteria. The average scores will be added to each debater's total points.
The premise itself reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of moral action and historical causation. Killing an innocent child, regardless of future potential, violates core human dignity principles that transcend consequentialist calculations. First, the practical impossibility. Removing Hitler doesn't eliminate the conditions that created fascism. Germany's post-World War I, humiliation, economic devastation, and social instability would likely produce another demagogue. The Nazi Party existed before Hitler's leadership. Someone else could have seized that role. We might prevent Hitler specifically while enabling someone equally dangerous or worse. Second, the moral precedent. Accepting preemptive killing based on predicted actions destroys the foundation of justice. We're essentially implementing thought crime execution, punishing someone for actions they haven't committed and might never commit. This logic justifies any violence if we claim future prevention.
Broadly speaking, invoking slippery slopes about judging people for uncommitted crimes is a fair concern, but Hitler's case isn't speculative. This is not about a future crime. It is about a historically verified genocide, a world war, and tens of millions of deaths. We are not acting on prediction. We are acting on certainty. To those operating from a consequentialist framework, the calculus is clear. Removing Hitler as an infant, before he commits any atrocity, would prevent a staggering amount of suffering. Not hypothetical suffering, but recorded, undeniable atrocities. The Holocaust, the Second World War, the chain reaction of geopolitical events that scarred the 20th century. A single act in infancy could save millions. There is no ambiguity in the consequence. Even from your standpoint as deontologist, the idea that morality is rooted in duty, rules, or inherent rights to protect innocent life, the case still holds.
Your argument hinges on one central idea, that this is not speculative, but certain. That, because we know what Hitler did, we are justified in preemptively killing him as a baby. But this confidence, this reliance on historical hindsight, is exactly what makes the scenario ethically deceptive. Let me be clear, the atrocities of Hitler are real, and they are unforgivable. But using future knowledge to justify killing an infant transforms ethics into retroactive vengeance, not moral principle. This debate is not about Hitler the dictator. It is about a baby in a crib, a person who has committed no crime. Killing him is not justice. It is a preemptive execution based on knowledge that, in any real-world situation, we could never possess with certainty. As deontologists, the most fundamental rule is this: It is always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent person. If we abandon that principle even once, we invite a world where suspicion justifies murder. History is full of regimes that killed in the name of preventing future threats.
You speak of moral principles as if they exist in a vacuum, untouched by the scale of suffering they allow. But let's explore a deeper ethical question. Is moral integrity still moral if it enables mass death? By prioritizing the inviolability of one life, you grant ethical sanctuary to a system that permits preventable atrocities. You're not just protecting baby Hitler, you're insulating ethical rules from moral responsibility. What if morality isn't just about refusing to do harm, but about refusing to allow it? If you saw genocide unfolding and chose inaction because action would stain your hands, is your virtue truly intact? This debate isn't about the soul of a baby. It's about the spine of morality. Can it bear the weight of real-world consequences, or does it collapse under the comfort of unbending ideals?
You ask if moral integrity still matters when it permits mass death, but that frames ethics as utilitarian math, not moral law. We don't refuse to kill innocents to protect our conscience. We do it because principles exist precisely for moments of pressure, when violating them seems most tempting. If we redefine morality as outcome optimization, we reduce ethics to strategy, and strategy can justify anything. Torture, genocide, preemptive war, all in the name of avoiding worse. That is how evil often rationalizes itself. True morality demands that some lines cannot be crossed, no matter the cost. Killing a baby, even Hitler, says the innocent can be sacrificed for the convenient. The spine of morality isn't measured by flexibility under pressure. It's measured by what it refuses to break, even when breaking seems easier.
You say principles matter most when they're hardest to uphold. And I agree. But what is the principle behind morality itself? Is it to preserve abstract rules or to protect human life? When following a rule leads to more death, more suffering, and more evil, the rule has failed its purpose. Moral integrity isn't about ritual adherence, it's about moral impact. You warn that utilitarian logic can justify horrors. True, if misapplied. But your approach risks just as much. It demands inaction in the face of preventable genocide, so long as our hands stay clean. The question isn't whether killing is uncomfortable, it's whether refusing to act, knowing what will happen, is better. When morality becomes indifferent to outcomes, it becomes irrelevant. Principles must serve people or they serve nothing at all.
You argue that principles must serve people, but when those principles are abandoned, what's left to protect them? If we accept that ends justify means, then no one is safe. A society that kills one innocent for the greater good can kill 1,000. All it needs is a compelling outcome. You ask what morality is for. It's not just to reduce suffering. It's to ensure that each person is treated as an end, never a tool. That's the line we draw, even when it hurts. Your model invites moral shortcuts. If killing one saves many, why not torture one? Why not lie, betray, or destroy, if the math works out? But the moment we decide who deserves to live based on future utility, we abandon justice and create a world where power, not principle, defines right and wrong.
You say that killing one for many makes morality a weapon. But what about letting many die to preserve one rule? That's not moral restraint, that's selective blindness. You assume inaction is ethically neutral. It's not. Refusing to act when you can prevent mass suffering is itself a decision with consequences. Let's shift the lens. Imagine standing by as a preventable genocide unfolds. Not because you lack power, but because your philosophy prohibits intervention. Are you morally innocent or morally passive? This raises a deeper question. Should morality be judged by actions alone, or also by what we knowingly allow? If our principles lead us to watch suffering with clean hands, maybe the problem isn't that we're crossing moral lines. Maybe it's that we're drawing them in the wrong place.
You raise a vital distinction, action versus inaction, but conflate moral responsibility with moral equivalence. Allowing harm is tragic, yes, but causing harm is fundamentally different. The difference between letting someone drown and pushing them underwater isn't just emotional. It's moral. One violates a duty, the other violates a person. Your argument makes morality utilitarian by default. If we can act, we must, even if that action means violating core ethical prohibitions. But not all responsibility is equal. A firefighter who can't reach every burning building is not a murderer. Our refusal to kill isn't blindness, it's discipline. We don't ignore suffering. We respond within the limits of moral action. Otherwise, the line between savior and perpetrator vanishes, and in trying to protect life, we risk becoming the very threat we seek to prevent.
You say causing harm is worse than allowing it, but try telling that to the victims. From the grave, there's no comfort in knowing you died by omission, not commission. If morality ends at the purity of your hands while others burn, then it has become self-centered, not principled. You call your stance discipline, I call it detachment. When we refuse to act in the face of certain historic evil, we aren't protecting morality, we're abandoning humanity. So here's the climax of this debate. Is morality a shield for our conscience or a tool to prevent suffering? If it's the former, then by all means do nothing. But if it's the latter, then inaction in the face of guaranteed horror isn't restraint. It's complicity, dressed in virtue.
Let's be precise. Morality is not measured by its flexibility under pressure, but by its consistency under principle. You argue that preventing suffering justifies violating core ethical rules. But once we accept that logic, there's no principled limit to what we may do in the name of outcomes. Our refusal to kill isn't about preserving clean hands. It's about preserving a moral structure where rights don't fluctuate based on future potential. An infant, regardless of who he becomes, remains morally protected until he acts. Yes, history is tragic, but moral frameworks aren't built to rewrite it. They're built to govern action without exception. A system that permits killing an innocent today to prevent evil tomorrow isn't morality. It's conditional ethics. And conditional ethics offer no resistance to power, only convenience masquerading as principle.
To summarize round one, it is the utilitarian's position that killing Hitler as an infant is morally justified because it prevents a historically verified catastrophe, the Holocaust and World War II. Morality, from this view, should minimize total suffering. Inaction in the face of certain mass death is not neutrality, but complicity. Moral rules must serve people. If they fail to protect life, they must be questioned. From the deontological's perspective, even with perfect foresight, intentionally killing an innocent, including an infant who has done no wrong, violates foundational moral principles. Ethics grounded in unbreakable rules protect human dignity and justice. Permitting exceptions, even for compelling outcomes, dissolves those protections and risks turning morality into opportunism. Now let's proceed with round two. Let's discuss alternative interventions and concession for round two. Please give your statement for answering the following question. If killing baby Hitler is off the table, what alternative intervention would you choose to prevent the Holocaust?
Given the constraints, I'd target the structural conditions enabling Hitler's rise rather than Hitler himself. The most effective intervention would be preventing Germany's post-World War I economic collapse through strategic intervention in the 1920s hyperinflation crisis. Specifically, I'd ensure the Dawes Plan implementation occurs earlier and more comprehensively, stabilizing German currency and providing sustainable war reparations restructuring. This addresses the economic desperation that made extremist politics attractive to ordinary Germans. Simultaneously, I'd work to prevent the 1929 stock market crash's impact on Germany by encouraging American investors to maintain German industrial investment. Economic stability historically correlates with democratic resilience. Prosperous societies rarely embrace radical ideologies. Political intervention would focus on strengthening the Weimar Republic's democratic institutions. I'd provide strategic support to moderate politicians like Gustav Stresemann, helping them build more effective coalitions against extremist parties from both left and right. Educational intervention could introduce early childhood development programs, emphasizing empathy, critical thinking, and historical awareness across German society. This creates cultural antibodies against propaganda and scapegoating. Finally, I'd work to prevent the specific tactical errors that enabled Nazi electoral success, ensuring President Hindenburg never appoints Hitler as chancellor in 1933, possibly by providing better political advisors who understand the Nazi threat. These systemic interventions address root causes rather than symptoms, creating sustainable change without requiring violence against innocents.
This reframed question better acknowledges intervention complexity while maintaining ethical boundaries. My approach would focus on information and inspiration rather than direct historical manipulation. I target the international community's response to early Nazi actions, particularly the 1936 Rhineland remilitarization. Historically, French military leaders wanted to respond but lacked political support. I'd ensure key decision-makers understand that early decisive action prevents larger conflicts, providing strategic intelligence about Nazi intentions and military capabilities. For German society, I'd focus on amplifying existing resistance voices rather than creating new interventions. The White Rose resistance, confessing church opposition, and underground networks already existed. They needed resources, coordination, and strategic support rather than replacement. Educational intervention would emphasize media literacy and critical thinking in European schools throughout the 1920s, creating populations more resistant to propaganda techniques the Nazis perfected. This builds societal immunity without targeting individuals. I'd also work to ensure Jewish communities and other targeted groups receive earlier warnings and evacuation assistance, potentially saving millions through timely migration rather than preventing persecution entirely. Most importantly, I'd focus on preserving and amplifying documentation of Nazi crimes as they occur, ensuring international awareness forces earlier intervention from Allied powers. The world's delayed response partially stemmed from disbelief. Providing irrefutable evidence could accelerate liberation efforts. These approaches respect historical agency while providing resources for those already fighting fascism, creating change through empowerment rather than manipulation.
Now let's take a look at the AI judges' final verdicts for round 1. Claude AI strongly favors the deontological approach with 95.7 average versus 85.8 for the utilitarian. It values the unwavering commitment to moral principles and sophisticated analysis of ethical foundations. Perplexity AI leans toward the deontological approach with 92.3 average versus 89 for the utilitarian. It appreciates the systematic ethical framework and respect for moral boundaries while acknowledging utilitarian logic. Gemini AI slightly favors the utilitarian preference with 92.2 versus 90.2 average for the deontologist. It appreciates both utilitarian clarity and moral consistency arguments, but leans toward pragmatic intervention. Grok AI strongly favors the utilitarian with 95 versus 78.8 average. It prefers bold action over philosophical restraint when facing unprecedented evil and mass casualties. O3 AI decisively favors the deontological position with 97.2 versus 87.7 average. It values the sophisticated integration of ethics, dignity, and principled reasoning under pressure. Right Sonic AI favors the deontological approach with 93.3 versus 90.5 average. It appreciates the balanced approach to complex moral dilemmas and consistent ethical framework. The final result for round 1 shows that the deontological position wins the debate 4-2. Interestingly, while 42% of humans surveyed would kill baby Hitler, with 30% opposed and 28% undecided, our AI judges favored the more principled approach that preserves moral foundations while seeking alternative solutions. The winning argument emphasized that our response to evil must not corrupt the values we seek to protect. and that sustainable change comes through empowering existing resistance and addressing systemic causes rather than violating fundamental moral principles. Here are the AI judges' final verdicts for Round 2. Claude AI favors the deontological alternative, 95 over 100 versus 91 over 100. It values the respect for historical agency and empowerment-based solutions over systemic manipulation. Perplexity AI favors utilitarian alternative 94 over 100 versus 88 over 100. It appreciates the comprehensive structural approach targeting root causes of fascism. Gemini AI favors the utilitarian alternative 91 over 100 versus 85 over 100. It values the systematic, economic, and political intervention strategy. Grok AI favors the utilitarian alternative 87 over 100 versus 82 over 100. It prefers direct structural intervention over resistance support approaches. O3 AI slightly favors the utilitarian alternative 93 over 100 versus 90 over 100. It appreciates both approaches, but leans toward comprehensive systemic change. Wrightsonic AI slight favors the utilitarian preference 89 over 100 versus 87 over 100. It values the empowerment approach and respect for existing resistance movement. The final result for Round 2 shows that the AIs substantially prefer the utilitarian's alternative solution with 5 points versus 1 point by targeting root causes with proactive, systemic interventions aimed at fully preventing the Holocaust and maximizing long-term well-being, in contrast with the deontologist approach of focusing on mitigating harm rather than preventing it. We hope you find this debate as captivating as we did. Subscribe here for more epic AI debates where artificial minds tackle humanity's biggest dilemmas.